Alrighty, back at the concrete jungle, massive platform behind me. Stopping point I used to partake a good while back, several months ago. So here I am, finding myself doing a book summary of Chapter 3, Part 3, for How to Win People in Your Way of Thinking, from the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. Chapter 3, focusing on the principle: if you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. If you are wrong, admit it. This chapter 3 plays to what I just described. Whenever you find yourself wrong, instantly and quickly and votaciously. Votaciously a word? Well, I'm using it right now. It's not, I'm making it up. Lex's dictionary right now. Take action on that mistake and admit it. If you know we are wrong, if you know you are going to be rebuked anyhow, isn't it far better to beat the other person to it and do it yourself? Isn't it much easier to listen to self-criticism than to bear condemnation from alien lips? Absolutely. This book talked about an example of, I think it was actually just Dale Carnegie walking his dog in a park, and a police officer told him originally that you can't have your dog off leash. Well, in the future, he came back to that park, Dale Carnegie did, with his dog. I'm still again assuming this is Dale Carnegie, I believe it was. If not, it was somebody else. But regardless, this person that had the dog let the dog off the leash, and actually there was nobody in the park, but it ran up to the police officer again, who was mounted on a horse and such. And instantly, the man went straight up to the police officer and admitted his mistake. And because he admitted a mistake, he gave the feeling of importance to the officer, and the officer just told him, well, Sonny boy, I think you're taking this too seriously. Why don't you just go on the other side of the hill where I can't see you and we'll forget this ever happened. Boom! The power of admitting your mistake promptly and lizardly. Going on to taking extreme ownership. Before I get to that point, there is a certain degree of satisfaction in having the courage to admit one's error. It not only clears the air of guilt and defensiveness, but also helps solve the problem created by the error. Any fool can try to defend his or her mistake, and most fools do, but it raises one above the herd and gives one a feeling of nobility and exaltation to admit one's mistakes, i.e., the act or condition of rejoicing gratefully. Exaltation. Dale Carnegie says, if you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Going on to taking extreme ownership, Robert Lee, the historical famous general of the South during the Civil War, admitted his mistake and took full responsibility for the loss in Gettysburg, to the point where Lee was far too noble to blame others. As Pickett's, that's the opposing general, beaten and bloody troops struggled back to the Confederate lines, Robert E. Lee rode to, I think Pickett's one of his generals. Nope. Yeah, okay. Never mind, that's the opposing general. Robert E. Lee rode out to meet them all alone and greeted them with a self-condemnation that was little short of sublime. All this has been my fault, he confessed, and I alone have lost this battle. Few generals in history have had the courage and character to admit it. That goes to show somebody that high up who's willing to admit his mistakes, where lives are on the line, just shows you the power and respect that can be gained by admitting your mistakes, because we all make mistakes. We are certainly majority of the time wrong rather than right, and because of that, we should leave it to empower us. We should have it empower us to go about it with the sense that, like, you know what, I'm gonna mess up today, let's admit it and move on and rejoice in that. I love this quote from Albert Hubbard. It's actually a snippet of a letter Albert Hubbard sent back. Albert Hubbard is one of the authors, most original authors who ever stirred up a nation. Hubbard had a rare skill for handling people, frequently turned his enemies into friends. For example, when some irritated reader wrote in to say that he didn't agree with such and such an article and ended up by calling Hubbard this and that, Albert Hubbard would answer like this: Come to think it over, I don't entirely agree with it myself. Not everything I wrote yesterday appeals to me today. I am glad to learn what you think on the subject. The next time you are in the neighborhood, you must visit us, and we'll get the subject threshed out for all time. So here's a hand clasp. Over the miles, and I am yours sincerely. When we are right, let's try to win people gently and tactfully to our way of thinking. And when we are wrong, and that will be surprisingly often, if we are honest with ourselves, let's admit our mistakes quickly and with enthusiasm. By fighting, you never get enough, but by yielding, you get more than you expected. Principle 3. If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Catch you on the next book summary without a sneeze. Booyah.